This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
I was somewhere during the summer, we'll call it Mekayimos HaKadoshim, together with the Rav. And I have to say, I have a kesher with the Rav that nobody here has. When we arrived at the Makom Kadosh, I can't say where, but Safain, B'marav, everybody's luggage came except for the two Rabbanim, which of course is anti-Semitism against Rabbanim. And you know, Chazal say, the Zohar HaKadosh says, Talmidei Chachamim are begeder Shabbos. So I get there, I don't have my suitcase, I don't have my personal belongings, I don't have a fresh change of clothing, and I'm very nervous, I'm very anxious, I'm very uncomfortable. But Baruch Hashem, I was together with the Rav. The Rav was b'simcha, he was b'menucha, he was explaining why it was better that we don't have it. I still don't get the cheshbon why it was better, but it was a good thing, I'm better off without it. And then me and the Rav bonded, we went to a store, we had to buy certain begadim I can't get into. It wasn't a bekasha, right? This momentous occasion, Malave Malka, everything is in the Parsha. We're in this Parsha. Do we have a remez to this Malave Malka? Yaakov Avinu comes to the Har Habayis, and he has a dream. Vayachaloim v'hinei sulam. Says the originator, sulam. Sudas levoyas Malka. He's dreaming of Malave Malka. What kind of Malave Malka is Yaakov Avinu dreaming of? But he's dreaming of a Malave Malka. Why is Yaakov Avinu dreaming of a Malave Malka? So you say this is not just a Malave Malka. This is a Siyum also. Says the Reinaim of Jacob, Sulam, Siyum, Mesechta Lasois. Not just Stam a Malave Malka. A Malave Malka with a Siyum. How do we know Yaakov Avinu made a Siyum? Vayishkav Amokoy Mahu, Yaakov Avinu goes to sleep. Vayikatz Yaakov, Mishnasai, says the Medrash, Al Tikri Mishnasai, Elami Mishnasai. Yaakov Avinu was learning Mishnah. He was learning Torah Shabbal Peh. And he wakes up and he says, let's make a siyum. How do we know Yaakov made a siyum? Achein yesh, Asir HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lahanchel l'chol tzadik v'tzadik, Shiur lamois. So he makes the siyum, and then he sees the sulam, siyum Masechta Lasois. So he's dreaming of this Malave Malka with the siyum. Let's try to understand, why is Yaakov Avinu of all things dreaming of Malave Malka? Why is he dreaming of a siyum? It's the 18th Malave Malka. We'll take a little poll. We know 18 is Chai. Who made up Chai? Where does Chai come from? Who decided Chai has significance? 18. What about Chaim? Nobody says anything about Chai. What's Chai? Where does it come from? Is there a pasuk in Chumash that talks about Chai? Is there a Mishnah, a Gemara, a Zohar? Says the Ben Ish Chai, Sukkah Memhei. We know there are 3 consecutive psukim in the Chumash of 72 letters. From these 3 consecutive psukim, they comprise 72 different names of Hashem. So for example, the first name is Vahoi. The 37th name is Ani Vahoi Hoshiana. Says the Ben Ish Chai, what's the 18th name of Hashem? Kaf, Lamed, Yud, Kli. The 18th name of Hashem is Kli. What's Kli? Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. And what's the significance of that? Says the Ben Ish Chai, when there's Achdus in Klal Yisrael. When Klal Yisrael comes together as a Kli, Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, it brings Chayim li Yisrael. That's tonight's Malave Malka. Sulam, Sudas Levoya Malka. Siyum Mesechta Lasois. A Kli, a phenomenal Achdus over here. But let's try to understand a little bit more. Why is Yaakov Avinu dreaming of a Malave Malka? Why is he dreaming of a Siyum? You know, if you look at Parshas Vayetze, there's a phenomenon in Vayetze that I don't think anyone picks up on. Everybody talks about this with Vayechi. Some speak about it with Parshas Balak. Nobody talks about this week's Parsha. Did you notice there's not one pei or samach in the whole Parsha? It's one continuous run-on story. There are no psuchos, there are no stumos. There are no stops in the whole Parsha. Haloi davarhu. The Baal HaTurim points out, Yesh Oimrim, it's a Parsha Sesuma. But what about the fact that there are no stoppages, there are no interruptions in the whole Parsha? So I want to share with you a Pashat Rashi. Rashi tells us in the beginning of the Parsha, Yaakov Avinu is going from the south of Eretz Yisrael. He's going from Be'er-Sheva. He's headed northeast. He passes by the Makom HaMikdash. He passes by Beisel. He reaches Charan. What does Yaakov Avinu say? Efsher she'avarti b'makom she'hispalu avoisai v'lo hispalalta. V'lo hispalalti, is it possible? I passed by the place that Avraham davened, that Yitzchak davened, and I didn't daven. Says Rashi, Yahiv daite l'mahader. He had in mind he's going to go back. He had in mind he's going to go back to where? Where did he have in mind he's going to go back to? So everybody learns, to look in all the Mefarshim, he had in mind he's going to go back to the Makom HaMikdash. That's how we all learn Rashi. And he did go back to the Makom HaMikdash. There's a very rare, maybe unknown, unusual sefer, an amazing sefer, on Masechta Chulin. It's called Dor Revi, an Einikol L'Chsam Sefer. Rav Moshe Shmuel Glasner, the Dor Revi. The Dor Revi says that's not what Rashi means. Rashi doesn't mean Yaakov Avinu said he's going to go to the Har HaBayis. Yaakov said like this, I learned 14 years in the Yeshiva Shem Ve'ever. I reached a very high level. I thought my neshama was sensitive enough that if I would pass by the Makom HaMikdash, I would get an alert. I would feel something. Hayitachin, I learned for 14 years, and I didn't pick up. I passed by the Makom HaMikdash. I must not have learned properly. Yahiv daite l'mahadar. I have to go back to the yeshiva. That's what it means, Yahiv daite l'mahadar. Must be I didn't learn well enough. So Yaakov heads back. Yaakov is longing for connection. Yaakov feels that you could be in a Makom Kadosh, you could experience a Shabbos, but one day Shabbos will be over. You could be in a Makom Torah, but one day you're going to have to leave. You could learn a Masechta, but the Masechta is going to be over. So Yaakov is yearning for connection. How do I hang on to a Shabbos? So Yaakov is dreaming, Sulam, Sudas Levaya Malka. How do I connect and remain connected to the Shabbos? Sulam. I learn a Masechta. How do I remain connected to the Masechta? Sulam, Siyam Masechta Lasois, Daitin Alach, V'daita Chalon, V'leitisna Sheminach, V'leitishna Sheminan. Yaakov is trying to come up with a way to remain connected even after he leaves the Makom Kadosh, even after the Shabbos is over. I must not have learned well enough. Sometimes a person asks, I just learned the Geshmak Seder, but, I'm not taking it with me. The Malbim writes that there's a difference by Kedusha between Negiah and internalizing. There's a difference between when you just encounter Kedusha and when the Kedusha gets into you. It's very important that if you want the Kedusha to remain with you, you don't touch the Kedusha. You have to bring the Kedusha inside of you. Sometimes a person's learning. The person says, okay, I have a phone on me. It's on vibrate. Learning with a phone on you? Is that Limud Torah? It's pisky. It's not like a half-hearted. It's like you're paying a token gesture to the ancient practice of the Hebrews 2,000 years ago that they used to learn Torah. Torah is immersive, without any distraction. Tefillah is immersive, without any distraction. Then you have an opportunity that after you leave the Makom Kadosh, it could continue on with you. But if the whole experience was only misafo l'chutz, kulei hai v'ulai, if it stays with you. Yaakov Avinu is dreaming of connection. He's dreaming of the Sulam, of the Siyum to connect to the Torah, of the Melave Malka to connect to the Shabbos. So Yaakov Avinu in the beginning of the Parsha, it's very interesting. He dreams of Malachim. Hinei Malachi Elokim Oilim v'Yardim Bai. Let's talk about this for a minute. Yaakov sees Malachim. He's not awake. He's dreaming of Malachim. He couldn't see it behakets. He couldn't see it in a state of awakeness. You fast forward 20 years to the end of the Parsha. Vayifka'u bai Malachi Elokim. Yaakov's awake. And he sees Malachim when he's awake. What happened to Yaakov? In the beginning of the Parsha, he's like, in the minor leagues. He sees Malachim in a chaloim, b'nevuah. By the end of the Parsha, Yaakov Avinu's in major leagues already. He's meeting Malachim like you meet someone on the street. But I have to say over from Rav Shamshon Fall Hirsch, the Rebbetzins and Einokol of Rav Shamshon Fall Hirsch. Rav Shamshon Fall Hirsch says, in the beginning of the Parsha, Yaakov Avinu, vayifka b'makoim. What does Pegia mean? Pegia means to be awestruck. Vayifka b'makoim. Yaakov was taken. He was moved. He was shaken that he saw Malachim. By the end of the Parsha, vayifka'u bai Malachi Elokim, the Malachim were shaking. The Malachim were taken. The Malachim couldn't believe. Azam mensch like Yaakov. We can't believe we met him. So what happened in these 20 years? In the beginning of the Parsha, Yaakov can't even see them awake. He's shaken by seeing them. By the end of the Parsha, he sees them awake. They're moved by seeing Yaakov Avinu. What did Yaakov do in these 20 years? He did not learn. He learned before. Before he went to sleep, he was learning. He wasn't learning in this week's Parsha. What kind of aliyah did Yaakov have? He wasn't in the Beis Medrash. He wasn't in the Beis HaKnesses. How did Yaakov Avinu remain so connected for these 20 years? That from the beginning of the Parsha, he elevated himself so greatly that now the Malachim were shaking, seeing Yaakov Avinu. You know what he did? He went to work, and he didn't steal, and he didn't take paper clips from the boss, and he didn't have a runny nose and call in sick. And he didn't come up with the reasons why he doesn't have to put in a full day. He wasn't a ganav, then a gazlan. From here we see, I heard this from Rav Miller, that the biggest aliyah that a person could have in this world is after going to the Beis HaMedrash. If at work, you work erlich, you work honest, and you put in a full day, and you don't cheat the boss, and you don't bill incorrectly, that's the biggest aliyah, more than Talmud Torah, and more than minyan, and more than anything else. Ehrlichkeit. You want to remain connected to the yeshiva. Yaakov's avodah brought him the biggest aliyah in his life. And if you say, really? Is that true? I'll share with you a Pashat Rashi in Chumash. The first time the Rebbeinu Shalom spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu at the Sneh, does anybody know what did Moshe Rabbeinu do right before that? Rashi says, you know what he did? He grazed his sheep in the midbar, lehisrachik min hagezel. The Rebbeinu Shalom comes down from the Kisei HaKavod and speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu, Baspaklaria Hama'ira. The greatest divine communication in the history of the world was elicited how? Along Shemona Esrei? No. Liman HaTorah? No. Mitzvahs Masim Tovim? No. Hisrachkus min hagezela. In the beginning of the Parsha, Yaakov saw Malachim. By the end of the Parsha, the Malachim were nispoil that they met an honest Jew. There's only one person in the whole Yad HaChazaka, in the whole Rambam, that the Rambam calls a tzaddik. There's only one person. Anybody know who it was? There's only one individual in the whole Yad HaChazaka the Rambam calls a tzaddik. Says the Rambam in Hilchos Chiros, Kederech shemuzar balabayis shelo yigzal schar ani, kach muzar ha'ani shelo yigzal meleches balabayis. V'chayev lavoid b'chol koichai. Sheharei Yaakov hatzadik Amar ki b'chol koichi avadati es avichen. There are a lot of frum people. But what do you have to do to be a tzaddik? A tzaddik is someone who doesn't take money that doesn't belong to him. So the Rambam continues, and everybody's looking for a skula. The Rav gave a bracha for ashiros. Yeah? The Satmar Rebbe would say, Parnasa is for goyim, ashiros is for yidden. You like that? Says the Rambam, do you know who the richest Jew who ever lived? Avraham kaved ma'od. Avraham was very wealthy. Yitzchak vayigdal hoish haloich v'gadol. Yitzchak was very wealthy. Zok the Rambam, Yaakov Avinu vayifroitz hoish me'od. Says the Rambam, lefikach notal schar ba'olam hazeh shenemar vayifroitz hoish me'od. The Rav I know is an Einikol of the Bnei Yissaschar, yeah? I remember that. I'm going to share with you a very sensitive comment of the Bnei Yissaschar. It's painful to say, and it's more painful not to say. Bnei Yissaschar writes in the Agra de Pirka Ois Kuf Chavav. He writes this in other places as well. He brings a tradition from Menachem Mendel Rimanov. He says, what is the essential ingredient in raising Erlicha children? What is the most important segula in raising Erlicha children? He says you have to feed them kosher food. He says, but it's not the hechsher. I get badats. We're not talking about the hechsher. That's secondary. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, the ikar ingredient in raising Erlicha Yidden is that the food that you buy them is with kosher money. And it hit me this morning. Yaakov Avinu learned in the Yeshiva Shem Ever for 14 years, but he wasn't ready yet to build Klal Yisrael. He wasn't ready. You know why? Because he only learned. Now let's test him whether his money is Erlich. So the Rebbe Shalom sends him to Lavan's house. And he passes the biggest test in Erlichkeit in the history of the world. Says Rebbe Shalom, now you're ready to build the Shiftei Ka. Now your money is honest money. You could build Kinderlach. Says that Agra de Pirka, the Hatzlacha in raising children is primarily dependent on the kashrus of money. So here we are in the beginning of the Parsha. Yaakov Avinu is astounded that he saw Malache Hashares. By the end of the Parsha, the Malache Hashares were astounded that they saw Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov is dreaming of connection. How do you remain connected to yeshiva? Okay, we're mispalel, we make a siyum, hadrin alach. How do you remain connected to a Shabbos? You make a Melave Malka. You usher the Kedusha of the Shabbos with you. But most importantly, what we see from Yaakov Avinu, that the way to take Kedusha with you and bring it to the next level is actually not in the Beis HaMedrash. Is what do you do with the Beis HaMedrash after you leave? What is your Melave Malka? What is your siyum for what you do during the day? And in a certain sense, what you do for the majority of the day is one of the main ingredients in the destiny of your family, of your future, and all of Klal Yisrael. So we're mevarech this kehila be'ezus Hashem, chai v'kayam be'ezus Hashem, many more gezunta yarin under the leadership of the Rav and the Rebbetzin. Be'ezus Hashem, you should have many Melave Malkos, many siyumim, and you should be zoicha to raise banim uvnei banim, oiskim atar v'mitzvahs, me'ir mes ha'olam, b'tayro v'masim toivim, agit avach, agizint avach, amazal dekavach. Thank you very much.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.